What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here with Cheesehead TV, talking to a very special guest. It's Rob Demovsky from ESPN on your television dial. Rob, how the hell are you? How's the offseason treating you?
So far, so good, buddy. How are you?
I'm all right, hanging in there. We got God, it feels like forever until the draft, although I know it's going to go like that. It always does. Let's start with what you wrote on today. You talked about the offensive play time for all the guys, but I did like how you kind of framed it regarding the running back position.
Yeah.
It's funny, coming into last year, I think most people after the selection of A.J. Dillon thought one or the other of Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams would be gone, but it sure feels like it's a long shot for either one of those guys to return at this point.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, Aaron, yesterday when I talked to someone close to Jamal Williams who said the Packers never even initiated any talks.
I literally talked about that this morning. That was the big piece of news to me.
Yeah, and look, that's the Micah Hyde treatment, right? Like literally nothing. Exactly. And the fact, and going back to I think Corey Linsley, didn't he say, I can't remember if it was the last week of the season or into the playoffs that he never heard anything. I mean,
he hasn't heard a word. Yeah.
Yeah. Our history with this team, you can sort of read, I mean, not saying they won't get something done or they can't, right, but it sure kind of looks like that Jamal Williams are not willing to do with the guaranteed money that he thinks he should get. And he probably will with somebody.
Yeah.
And B, Jamal Williams hasn't heard a peep. So
that tells you a lot right there, because generally,
look, those guys have been, I mean, if you would have said on that April weekend in 2017,
right,
that your 4th round pick and your 5th round pick would play almost 4,000 combined snaps for you over 4 years, you probably would say, "Oh, that's pretty good," right? And
that's a decent investment, right? Absolutely. So, and the selection of Dillon, I'm not surprised in the sense of, yeah, you're right. I mean, squeeze everything you can out of them, but
yeah,
I think it's funny to watch go back and look at some of the reactions to the Dillon pick, and people were, I mean, the people who follow the draft religiously were all upset because they, quote, took a running back too high. Yeah. But in the sense that we know they love the player, they've been following him. Remember the way they talked about the moment he stepped on campus at BC, right, they've been tracking his progress as a prospect. It's clear that they really want to put their eggs in that basket.
Yeah, and we saw how important the running game is to the way they want to play offense. Not the way they played in 2019, but the way they played in 20. But, and look, A.J. Dillon, we all talked all summer about how can he catch the ball, can he not? And, maybe he was a little better than we thought, but he's still not.
He doesn't have the smooth hands.
Yes, he's not what Aaron Jones became, what Jamal Williams became, what even Tyler Ervin was. So they're going to have to find a running back that can do that kind of stuff. A.J. Dillon's got a chance to be a really good power running back, number one kind of guy, but I don't think he's ever going to be running wheel routes or lining up.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Hey, look, Jamal Williams put in the work last offseason. Remember how different he looked when he came back this summer? We were all kind of like, who's this guy? But
I
really understand what you're saying, though.
Yeah, I really thought Jamal Williams would be, in line for one of those like James Starks type of contracts.
Totally agree.
2 years. What was it? I don't know, 8, 9, whatever it was.
Just something to bridge, like this idea I always thought would be, okay, if you can't get Aaron, and it's clear that that's not going to happen, then you go to Jamal and say, look, why don't you stick with Aaron Rodgers for a year or two more, pump up your numbers, and then hit the
and maybe the market will dictate. Yeah, maybe there won't be a big market for him, or I mean, it's going to, as you've talked about and tweeted about, and many times, like, look, it's going to be a different offseason with free agents. It's kind of a bad 100%. Year. Unless you're an absolute stud, it's a bad year to be a free agent.
I mean, let's talk about that for a second, because there's clearly this cap crunch coming. Nobody knows specifically yet what that number is going to be for the cap, but it's going down. We all know that. There's no question that that's going to happen. And I do know there's kind of this prevailing sense that you could have a number of kind of almost a bloodletting from teams that are way over the cap. Hell, the Packers are over the cap for the first time in a long time having to deal with that kind of thing. That there could be guys on the market who would be amiable to possibly, and this is maybe wishful thinking, but possibly sign with the Packers for a year on a cheap deal to come chase a ring with Aaron Rodgers. Do you think that's
a
possible?
Great point. Yeah. Like, and remember Goody said, like, I don't remember, he doesn't talk a ton, but one of the times that he talked, he said there's going to be a secondary market, in free agency. It's going to be bigger so not only do they want to be under the cap because they need to be under the cap for their own stuff, but they also want to be under the cap because there's probably going to be some guys exactly what you mentioned that are good veteran players that are going to be had cheaper than what they would be in any other year. So, Goody is, look, I mean, he gives a little bit more hints about what he has in mind, than
Ted ever did.
No, he never did. But when he said that, it wasn't this last time he spoke. It was maybe it was when Bakhtiari.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it was during Bakhtiari's availability.
I filed that away. Yeah. I got a lot of empty space up here. I filed that away. He thinks he's going to be able to get some guys, that maybe ordinarily wouldn't be gettable.
And that was I can't remember verbatim, but that's what he was alluding to as far as different than we usually operate. Something along that kind of.
Yes. I can't remember how he phrased it either, but that was the impression that I was left with.
So it will be interesting to see how they go about not only attacking free agency, obviously, but the draft as well, simply because now with a new defensive coordinator and a new, I guess, scheme, although we have yet to hear from Matt himself about what they want to implement on that side of the ball. What did you think about the process here? Because it's clear, that it was so interesting when you broke the news that Pettine hadn't signed an extension and was going into this last year of his deal, and they just let him walk. And then Matt cast a pretty wide net as far as who he's looking at. How did you feel about the entirety of how all of that kind of transpired?
Yeah. So two things. First, about Pettine, I think it was real telling, if you look back in hindsight, that he didn't let I didn't know about it, at the time last year when Pettine, his status, remember, briefly was up in the air a little bit after the San Francisco game.
Remember how Matt came out for that press conference and he got done and everyone was like, wait, is he going to fire Pettine right now?
Right.
So later in the
that
day,
in part is what led Pettine to not sign the rollover, because he didn't feel great about that. And he kind of wanted to see how it went with Matt and how that year went. So, learning all that after the fact, and then it makes a little bit more sense. I still say if they don't have the communication breakdown,
he's
at the end of the half,
totally agree.
He's probably still the coordinator regardless of the contract situation. But look, I understand both sides. I understand both sides the way they approached it. It's an opportunity for Matt to basically further put his stamp on the staff. And I don't think Pettine was forced on him. I've not gotten any indication that maybe he was.
Right.
But because people have asked me that all the time, and maybe you've asked it too. I don't know whether he was. I've never gotten any indication that he was. I'm sure, I know when staffs turn over, the GM or somebody in the organization said, hey, we'd like you to take a look at this guy.
Right.
We like what he's done, whatever. But anyway, so now we move on to the 9 candidates, I think it was, that he interviewed, if I'm not mistaken. I reported it over the course of 2 days, and I lost count. But
there were a lot.
Yeah, it does go to show that in this league, and maybe this is like in a lot of businesses, and it's not unlike how I got my job at ESPN.com. It is about who you've worked with, and who you're comfortable with, and who you're familiar with, right, wrong, or indifferent. That is a fact. And guys in this business maybe aren't as willing to take chances on the unknown. Okay, like maybe Evero, is that how you say Evero? However you say it. Maybe his ceiling is way high, but the unknown factor, is there too. And Joe Barry, I know his track record may not have been great as a coordinator, but the other thing you got to look at is what did he have to work with in those places?
Well, and that's always kind of the caveat there, right?
Yeah, but the fact that they worked together in Los Angeles, and the fact that it's not any different than how Matt got hired. Matt got hired because he worked with a scheme that everybody likes. Well, Joe Barry just got done they didn't run the same scheme for 4 years, but he just got done working with a scheme in Los Angeles that everybody really likes. So I will tell you this about Joe Barry. And I've had one conversation with him in my 24 years of covering this league, but he is energetic. You mentioned aggressive, right? Like, I know there's people that that said maybe he isn't aggressive. He's aggressive now, okay? And I think it was your question in LaFleur's press conference, right? I can't remember exactly how he asked it, but
well, I said I look forward to hearing the word aggressive from both he and his defensive coordinator.
Yeah, two things that people have told me in the last couple of days is that he's high energy and he wants to play aggressive. Now he hasn't always played aggressive because of his personnel didn't allow it. He wants to play aggressive. I don't think you'll see, third and 3 guys 5 yards, 6 yards off. And I know that's one of your that's like replace the 3-man rush with you, isn't it?
Hey, look. Now, in my defense, I am not alone in this. Matt LaFleur himself brought that stuff up. And to me, that was always kind of the writing on the wall with Pettin, right? It just never felt like it meshed. It never felt like they were on the same page. And it was always weird to me that LaFleur's there in the press talking about things he wants on defense. Well, you've been with him for 2 years. Like, can't you tell him this is how I want this stuff called?
Walk down the hall, right?
Right, literally, he's right there. So but to me, this is okay. LaFleur's made the hire. The honeymoon is close to over now. And that's not, I'm not sitting here saying that, Matt LaFleur's in trouble, because of course he's not.
No.
But, Patton was a bit of an arranged marriage. And now he has gotten to go and get his guy. And
isn't it such a weird dynamic with what they've done the last 2 years? I mean, 26-6, right, in the regular season, 28-8. I mean, like, that record's unbelievable.
But it doesn't feel good enough, right? Like, that's the crazy part.
Yes, that is what I'm saying. It's such a weird dynamic. Like, and look, I mean, wasn't it the Sports Illustrated story on Mike McCarthy where the headline was "Entitled Town"? You know, like
I don't know if it was a headline, but that was where it was the first time I ever saw it in print. And I can't remember who wrote it, but it was perfect.
It was Austin Murphy, I believe.
Murphy, that was
the great Austin Murphy, good, unbelievable writer.
And he called it Entitled Town.
It wasn't a headline, but the story was.
No, it was in the story, though. Yeah,
this has become Entitled Town, and look, man, like. I can 26-6, just 13-3 back-to-back years. Did LaFleur even get a single vote for Coach of the Year? Maybe
he was nominated. We know that, but I don't think he got. I don't think he got a vote.
Well, I don't know if he even got a vote. But like that's crazy to me that like and look, it's a regular season award, so you can't count what happened in the NFC Championship game because the ballots were already turned in. You can't say, well, but like still, it's such a weird dynamic, in that we're sitting here going. What happens if they don't even get to the championship game next year?
Well, that's the point, though, right? Because now the honeymoon is over. You've got your guy. Clearly, Pettin wasn't up to your standard, whatever that is, and now you've got to deliver. And of course, this all brings us back or around to the quarterback. Because look, the reason that perception exists is because Aaron Rodgers is so good. Because he has now won his 3rd MVP. And I'm sure you get this on your Twitter feed just as much as I do. They are wasting Aaron Rodgers. They've only gotten 2 Super Bowl championships with back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I'm not going to go into why all that is ridiculous. But I will say that is what drives that perception of getting to the NFC Championship game is not good enough.
No question. You're 100% right about that. I always say to the people that, so they're wasting Aaron Rodgers, I say 2 things. 1, maybe you're right, but 2, Aaron Rodgers is partially responsible for wasting some of Aaron Rodgers too. Like, I mean, that's just too easy to say. Yeah, it's too easy to say they've wasted him. Okay, yeah, sure, but he's contributed to it too. Like, I mean, maybe the reason they haven't drafted a receiver in the 1st round is because they're worried that he won't like him and they'll have wasted a pick. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Right?
I know. I feel you. Well, let's get into the power dynamic there, because obviously that has been a story, especially hot off of the loss in the championship game. A lot of heat around Rodgers and his appearance on the Zoom call afterwards. Yeah. I know you and I have gone back and forth on Twitter. You and Corey went back and forth on Twitter. Yeah. Look, where there's smoke, there's fire. No one's naive enough, at least, that covers the team on a daily basis to not understand Rodgers knows what he's doing in that regard. Yeah. What drove me nuts was this: how it springs up into a cottage content industry where it's like, where Schefter's on your program saying, where could Aaron end up? Where are the top 5 destinations of like, and I get it, that drives traffic, etc. Anyone in and around the team knows Aaron's not going anywhere next year.
Right. Here's what I wish would happen. And I'm trying to live in this utopia, whatever, but like, I wish what Aaron and his people the messages that they're sending out privately,
Right.
I wish that matched the message that they would say that would be told publicly, because
Right.
there is a difference there. There's a difference, not a huge difference, because like you said, he knows what he's doing. And if you read between the lines, like if you knew nothing at all about anything other than what you saw in the press conference, you'd think, yeah, this is crazy. Why would the Packers ever want to get rid of Aaron Rodgers? Why would Aaron Rodgers ever want to leave Green Bay? But the fact of the matter is that Rodgers' people in the organization have sent messages that that there are certain things that maybe would make it so that Rodgers would feel a little bit more like he's the guy, not just for another year. Look, he doesn't want to be a lame duck quarterback. Like,
right.
I mean, he doesn't want to live year to year. So you know what? Adjust the contract, add a dummy year at the end, guarantee the next 2 years of base salaries or turn them into bonuses or whatever, and you've solved that like that. On the flip side, he could end it with one statement and say, you know what, I'm going to be here and I'm going to win a championship here. I'm going to do my best every year, and we're going to try to win a championship every year that I'm here. And it could be done. But they haven't done that, and he hasn't done that. So,
well, as Andrew Brandt is fond of saying, deadlines spur action. And I got to think the new league year, once the salary cap is set and they know exactly what they're working with, I would suspect something gets done. Like,
no doubt,
as far as an adjustment to his contract.
And Rodgers' part, he backed it up, man. Like he went out there and said, okay, and I don't mean said this literally. I mean,
right, no.
He said, okay, you drafted my possible replacement, and I've written that since day one as possible replacement. I've never written that Jordan Love was the replacement. Possible heir apparent.
Right.
And Rodgers didn't play all that well in 19 by his standards. 18 was a complete shit show, if I can say that on Tuesday.
You may, sir, you may.
17 was an injury year, right?
Right.
So he had not played that great. But you know what? He went out and proved to everybody with this year that he's still the best.
Got it, man.
He's still right? Like, so he's got all the bar. If ever a 37-year-old quarterback has leverage, you know what? He's got it right now. And I don't blame him. Use it.
Absolutely. It is interesting, though, to watch how the perception around Rodgers is, to my mind, so much different, especially online. We're all online 24 hours a day now. It's a much different news cycle than it was when Favre was kind of hemming and hawing, and then they drafted Rodgers. But it is interesting to see how much grace Rodgers seems to be given in a sense that Favre wasn't, I guess, because of the waffling on retirement.
The waffling. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So everyone was sick of that. So they were like, oh, Brett, shut up. Whereas with Aaron, everyone's like, give Aaron whatever he wants.
Right. No, you're right.
Simplistic.
You are right. And obviously we lived through the 2000. When did it start? 2003, 4?
Around there. That's when the retirement talk started.
Yeah, I definitely remember 06, where he took the picture with all the linemen on the field.
Oh my God! Right.
After
I've all forgotten about that. Oh my God!
Was that 06 in Chicago? I got the media guide here. They finished the year.
I think it was 06, yeah.
Yeah, I thought they finished the year on the road somewhere, and
because 07 was the championship.
Yeah, 07 was the championship. Yeah, at Chicago, 06, New Year's Eve, which also coincidentally is the night that Pete Doherty, Mike Vandermoss, and I made a pact never to eat Taco Bell again because we drove home from Soldier Field back to Green Bay, and the only thing open. It was I think that might have even been a night game.
It was.
We were driving through like Kenosha, Wisconsin at like 1:30 in the morning after working, and the only thing we could get was Taco Bell in Kenosha or Racine, and we all got sick, and we made a pact. And I know for a fact that Pete has stuck to it and still has not eaten Taco Bell. Amazing. I caved about a year and a half.
Oh my God! Well, anyway, I in solidarity will stick with you.
I remember one year, and this obviously when I was at the Press Gazette. Right. It had to be. I mean, it was before this 06 year. I remember one year being out drinking one night in like April when Chris Mortensen or Werder, one of those guys, broke the news that Favre was coming home. And I had a pretty good run going I think it was at the bar on Holmgren Way. And it was about 10:15 at night. I got a call from the office. I had to run in and write the A1 story in about 15 minutes. And I won't say I wrote that story hammered, but
close. You did your best Christopher Hitchens impression. I like it.
Close. Yeah.
Well, see, that's the thing. To me, And of course, they aren't perfect parallels. That's what everyone always jumps to.
No.
It's like, it's not the same thing. I get it's not the same thing. But the idea that there is this 3-time MVP, absolutely can do no wrong in the eyes of some quarterback.
Yeah.
Clearly facing his mortality on the team.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say about Rodgers too, and I give him a lot of credit for this. He has bought in like to the LaFleur.
Oh, no doubt.
Even in 19, when the offense wasn't. I thought it was one of his better years, not from a performance standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint. Because if Aaron Rodgers doesn't show buy-in to Matt LaFleur, then Zadarius Smith doesn't become the leader maybe that he is, and it just permeated throughout the thing. And I do give Rodgers a ton of credit for that. Now, the flip side of that is, people would say, well, what else was he going to do? He got what he wanted with the coaching change. If he didn't buy into this guy, he was never going to buy in. That is
kind of the flip of that, yeah.
It is, but I still, he did it. Like, it's whatever the reason he did it, and he bought in. And from the last 2 years, his leadership and his attitude and his approach and all that was everything that you could have wanted if you were either Goody or LaFleur. I mean, so again, I think Rodgers deserves a ton of credit for that.
I couldn't agree more in that regard. I do think it's funny, though, because it's like, you don't lead the league in throwaways in 18 trying to get Mike McCarthy fired and then finally get your desired offensive scheme in there and then pout about it.
We've talked about this before, I know, but like I brought this up with somebody the other day. I'll just never forget walking out of the press conference after the Buffalo game in 18. Right? They won. What was it? 22-0.
That was literally the game that Mercedes Lewis mentioned, where he just changed the play in the huddle.
Yeah,
because he was like, I'm not calling that.
Yeah, so they win that game 22-0. We all probably were going to write because we're simple Tims. We all were probably going to write, hey, first shutout since the Jets game in 2009 or whatever it was, and the defense might be turning a corner here with Pettin and Rodgers with one press conference changed the narrative. And I walked out of there, and I know I've said this to you before, but I walked out of there going, holy crap, he's trying to get the coach fired.
100%. And I know Aaron later on at the end of the year mentioned how he wished he would have handled that better, etc. Totally get that, but that is what he was trying to do. Like, he was sending that message. Yep. Like, there is zero doubt about it.
No doubt.
So what do you think going forward here? Like we said, we got the offseason to play out yet. But how do you think this lays out in 2021? Obviously, Rodgers, whatever they end up doing with his contract, LaFleur is there for a number of more years. He's got his defensive coordinator now. Yeah. How do you think the prospects fare? Obviously, like I said, we got a lot to play out roster-wise, but how do you think it lays out? It's not like there's a big threat from anybody in the division. Now, teams can jump up and jump down. We know the nature of the NFL, but how do you think this team is situated to try and make another run?
Well, I mean, it depends on a couple of things, and you hate to boil it down to one or two players, but David Bakhtiari tore his ACL on New Year's Eve.
Oh, late.
So that's
late,
I mean,
late.
The fast track on that is 10 months, and that's fast track. Yeah. And we know Dr. McKenzie, how he would rather
hold him out as long as possible.
Yes, he would rather these guys stay out. So I mean, and look, I'm not saying that they beat Tampa if David Bakhtiari is playing, but they have a hell of a lot better chance.
But I'm saying that. There's no doubt they beat Tampa.
Yeah, because Rick Wagner's not on the field. Billy Turner's playing on the right side, et cetera, et cetera. So they've got to figure out the tackle. Like, and everybody, the national narrative, my own company included, is they got to get Rodgers more weapons. Another weapon wouldn't have beaten Tampa Bay. Another a nickel corner, an outside corner, an offensive tackle, that a middle linebacker that would have beat Tampa Bay. Not another receiver. Are Lazard and MVS good enough? Probably.
They were good enough for the number one scoring offense.
Exactly.
Robert
Tonyan never would have seen that coming.
Right.
He's I doubt that was he's athletic
part of the plan,
enough
right?
Yeah, he's athletic enough to think that he can. Not saying he's going to get 11 touchdowns, but that he can be a viable guy. The question with him is health. But you're going to need some reinforcements. On those key spots, and if they draft a receiver, fine. I don't think they have to.
Agreed.
That maybe do a a fourth, fifth round guy, maybe take a couple of them like you did that one year. But, the salary cap puzzle is going to have to be, look, I'm not going to say Preston Smith's not going to be on this team, but he's going to have to, the contract's going to have to be done there.
That's what I keep saying to people. Like, fans I know are so like, we got to cut this. It's all very fantasy driven in the sense, or Madden driven in the sense of, like, get rid of this guy, add this guy. It's like, these guys have been in your program for how many years? Like Dean Lowry is another one I get a lot where, okay, we got to cut him. No, they'll probably ask these guys to restructure. I would think.
Yeah, and I'm sure there will be a few cuts.
Yes.
But yeah, you start with restructuring, and it's going to, everyone, the thing is, everyone's going to have to do this. As you mentioned, the Packers have never really been in this position before, and through no fault of their own, they're now in it, but so is almost everybody. And, I still wonder, and again, this is long-term thinking, I wonder, who's the backup quarterback? I mean, Jordan Love has to be the number 2 this year, doesn't he?
That's going to be fascinating to see play out. And I've seen people already saying, well, they're going to let Tim Boyle walk. And I'm like, wait a second. You have no guarantees that Love can even play.
The thing they have to do, Aaron, and this is, to me, again, this doesn't impact 2021 at all, but they have to give him number 2 quarterback reps. Because, remember in camp, it was
1,000%. He's out there playing with the 4th string. Like, what do you expect?
Like, so you'd get a 10-minute team period this summer, and Rodgers would take the first 5 reps. Boyle would take the next 3, and Love would get 1 or 2, and one of those is a toss. With
the 5th string. It's like, you couldn't agree more.
And again, but let's get back. I got off track as I want to do, but let's get back to this. 21, and how can they stay relevant and try to make another run at the Super Bowl? I don't think it's I think there'll be some defensive pieces that have to get added because of the way they want to play. Mike McCarthy always said it, and he's probably right. It takes 2 years to implement, a new scheme and get it to where you want. So there are going to be some growing pains, with this defense. But the offense should be in a place where year 3, man, they're green light go. Baby.
It'll be interesting to see how teams try to adjust to what the Packers put on film last year. But given Rodgers' level of play in this scheme, I don't ever see that taking a major step back. I'm with you, man. The defense, there are going to be tough moments. There's no doubt. I am interested to see what they do. To me, everything comes down to up front. Kenny Clark has to get some help. Like, there are way too many games last year where you see them just manhandled up front. And I'm not just talking about in the running game, but in the passing game, just it's way too much time for quarterbacks to operate. And obviously, some of that is coverage dictated, but to me, that can make everybody else's life easier.
My 2-bit opinion has been the same since Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers rushed for however many, was that 2013? This has been my contention. My contention is the Packers defense has never been fast enough. Everyone wants to talk about stout, big people, whatever. To me, and it just, Tampa reinforced it. The Chargers a couple years ago when they beat the Packers, I thought their speed was a big difference. Everyone's powerful.
It jumps off the field when you see it, right?
Yeah, there's degrees of power. Like Vita Vea, obviously. He's power, right? No question. But to me, everybody's got some degree of power. Not everybody's got the same degree of speed. And so I've been saying now, going on 7, 8, 9 years that that speed, especially in the middle of the defense, is lacking.
And it's so funny how little they seem to heed that. Like, as far as, like, not just defensively but offensively, what do they always default to? Big, strong guys, a wide receiver, and that goes back to Ron Wolf. This has been going on since like '92.
Again, maybe I have no idea. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just what I see. From the naked eye.
Man.
That's what I see.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, as most of your stuff does. Not all of it, because nobody bats 1,000. Nobody bats 1,000. But for a guy batting 800, let's say, you're doing all right. Rob, I can't thank you enough for hanging out, talking Packers with me here on Cheesehead TV.
It's great to see your face, man. It's been way too long.
Hopefully, post COVID, I'll be out in Green Bay, and we'll replicate that night you had to write the A1 story on Favre.
Or at least was it not this season, but last season at Cleo's down in Appleton.
That was it. That was a fun happenstance. We'll have to recreate.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, buddy. We'll be seeing you.